I would say that my background is consulting. I've been an independent consultant for 15 years or so, focused on program management, change management, marketing. On the side, over decades, I've supported organizations that look out for underserved communities. What I'm doing today is also combining that consulting experience with serving underserved communities, in particular women and girls, but also local community through the Association of Junior Leagues International, where I'm a member at large of their governance committee. I'm also starting to work with a local organization, the Community Foundation for Southern New Mexico. And I'm also doing some work with the Association of American University Women, who support women and girls in education. I would say for a couple of reasons. So, despite what the current administration is doing around DEI, it's still very important because of the changing demographic of the world. There's a study that's going out saying that in 2045, it's expected that the white population will actually be a minority at that time. So I think organizations have to keep that in mind as they're thinking about both consumers as well as employees and figuring out how to do their marketing and who to market to and who to hire. I think also there's what I would call a cross-pollination of ideas that social media has helped to perpetuate. One of my last gigs with EM involved a media company owned by a Black gentleman who was expanding and wanted to continue to be diverse. And I helped to work on some of the branding around that. And I love that they were looking at this mashup of cultures between African American and Japanese to come up with their logo. And you can also see that in kind of the dances that you see on TikTok and things like that, where there's a mashup of people in India dancing to hip hop music. So whether we want to acknowledge it or not, these things are happening as a result of our society and becoming a smaller global world. This is definitely a timely and big issue going on right now. I think there was even a mention in the latest president's speech around elimination of DEI. So it's interesting to see how companies and organizations are reacting to this. It's similar to how you see marketing being the first thing cut when times get tough. I do think there was some performative stuff going on there around DEI. And definitely for those companies that are finding it easy to cut, to me, that tells me a couple of things. One, they're either reacting to some of the executive orders from the current administration and it's a fear-based reaction. Or two, it was never really entrenched in their strategic plans, their strategic goals, their policies, their value, their operations. And so, again, that makes it really easy to cut. But I think for those companies that are making it ingrained in the DNA of how the company functions, you'll see what's happening is they are changing the name from DEI or DEIB to things like cultural equity or cultural environment or what have you. They're going on the down low with it, but they're continuing it. Or they may be modifying it so that they're taking off statements from their website and changing things in what they're saying publicly so that it's a little more ambiguous. But what you're also seeing is that companies are sticking to their plans and saying that DEI is good for business, which has been proven study after study. Both McKinsey, Deloitte have put out studies saying for those companies that value diversity and are including diversity in the mix of how they do business, they're performing better. So I think the bottom line is going to drive a lot of this. One of the shifts that I've noticed as well around this work, DEIB, is that organizations are moving from asking their staff to do DEIB work as a side hustle and not really recognizing it or paying their employees for it, to actually including it as part of the goals of the employee and measuring it. And what you'll find is that those organizations that are doing that, that are making it an integral part of how employees are looked at, that the behavior, are they being inclusive in how they are doing business? You'll see that those organizations are going to continue with DEIB, but they'll also be more satisfying to employees because employees will be recognized for the work. One of my favorite people, Netta Jenkins, who has this wonderful product that measures how you are able to tell what employees are doing around DEIB, put out an article recently saying that employees are leaving if they aren't, and they'll go elsewhere to organizations that are recognizing the work that they do. Because again, nobody wants to feel like they're doing this work, but they're not getting recognized or paid for it. I think those times have passed. It's now time to reward people for the work. Back in 2020, based on the death of George Floyd, I was actually in Australia and we were seeing the impact there as well. I pivoted into doing consulting work around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. And my first client was EM Marketing. I reached out to one of the founders, Ken Shen, and we were serendipitously thinking about the issues at the same time. And I said, can I help with this? And we just decided right then and there to take it on. So while I was in Australia, I started working with EM. And then when I returned back to the States, I continued to work with them for some time as well. You know, besides looking at the why for doing the work, also one of the things that makes EM unique is that they have diversity at all levels of the organization. They have women at the highest level of the organization. They have people of color at the highest level of the organization. Ken and Kathy are Asian founders. So that right there gives them a niche, I think, over other organizations. What I wanted to do with them is leverage a lot of their approach and representation and how that helps to determine recruitment, understanding culture, and seeing people's humanity, and all those good things came into play as we were doing this work. So it was a pure joy to work with them, and I feel very blessed to have done it. There were three main areas that we focused on: diversity and representation. They wanted to understand what we can do to be more inclusive and represent community. They also looked at inclusion and engagement. And then we also looked at equity, fairness, and what we can do to provide equitable access to opportunities. And I'll drill down on that one because out of all these efforts, I felt like did double duty, because not only did it help to change behavior of EM's clients, it also provided opportunities for its consultants and could be the beacon for other diverse consultants because of the way it was done. So in the early stages where you're looking at resumes and bios, we remove things that might cause bias, whether that's gender bias, ethnic bias, to minimize that bias. And we got really good positive feedback from our clients around it. And so it ended up going very well. I think EM could do even more to advertise that they do this sort of thing. and can attract clients who are looking for that type of support around diversity and inclusion, but also diverse consultants. Hope and inspiration is really important right now, isn't it? For sure. The fact that our population is getting more diverse and we're getting countries are cross-pollinating cultures. If companies aren't recognizing this, they are going to be less competitive. That's just the bottom line. Things like this article about Gen Zers, who are the next, level of workforce coming in. They are looking for organizations that are inclusive at all levels. They are demanding this. And if they don't see it, they will go elsewhere to find it. So it's things like that that give me hope. Also, there's an article that came out from resume.org that interviewed or surveyed all these organizations and said that 65% are still continuing on with DEI and 22% plan to increase their spend around it. So again, that gives me hope that over half of these organizations plan to move forward with DEIB, regardless of what you're hearing in the headlines and all the scariness there. I posted this on my LinkedIn. It's like the train has left the station. Our population is changing. Our world is getting smaller. If companies aren't on board already, you're going to get left behind. In those moments when I am feeling kind of low, I look at what am I doing to move the needle and to do something positive. And so, again, my work with women and girls, I think, is incredibly important, especially around how women and girls have been impacted in our current political environment. So, do what you can. Do what you can to move that needle.